So this is CJ Baker, and this is the ongoing history of protest music. And right now, my special guest is Chris Dowd, a founding member of the legendary genre bending band Fishbone. They're currently on tour, and they're about to release their latest album, Stockholm Syndrome. So thanks for joining me today.
Well, thanks for having me.
Well, definitely your band has a considerable legacy. And when you started over 4 decades ago, did you ever think you would still be making music together?
Um, in some variation of that, yeah, absolutely. You know, um, myself and Angelo, um, even when I sort of, took a extended we'll call it an extended hiatus from the band, we always remained friends, and myself and Kendall Jones as well. So I'm still maintaining those relationships. I feel good about that. Nothing is perfect,
Yeah.
so we just have to. If 4 decades of being a artist means anything, it's like you have to meet people where they are
Yeah, that's true.
at all times.
Yeah.
You know, so that's where I am.
Yeah. So the band definitely has a considerable legacy. And that
Yeah,
legacy is ongoing. Like, yeah,
it is
continuing to make music. And that
definitely.
includes your ninth studio album, Stockholm Syndrome, which will be released June 27th. And then we already mentioned that there has been a bit of a hiatus. So I know you recorded the EP in 2023, but prior to that, there was a long stretch between recording, and I know you took a personal hiatus. Does that hiatus affect the recording process at all?
You mean when I left the band in 1994?
Yeah.
I
Is it just like
mean,
riding a bike, or do you have to get adjusted again? And
I mean, well, I guess I wouldn't even refer to that really, to be honest with you, as the hiatus. I mean, I quit because I felt that it was going in a creative direction I didn't agree with.
oh, okay.
So, like, I was trying to be a little more diplomatic
Yeah.
and refer to it as an extended hiatus
Yeah.
sarcastically. But no, it was like I was, not feeling the direction it was going in. I feel like music is a very powerful thing.
Yeah.
It's a powerful, it's a powerful gift and opportunity we've been given, and I really try to honor that because you realize, you know, that saying how it takes a village. I think music is the same in that regard. It takes a village of people to sort of support a person being able to maintain being an artist.
Yep, it
So,
does.
and then on this other side, I feel like have this sort of, what's the word I'm looking for? This sort of like obligation
Yeah.
to be a voice for the voiceless.
Yeah.
And it's not an obligation in a negative sense. It's like it's an amazing obligation, an opportunity, and feel gifted to be able to put emotional intention and words and feelings into a form that speaks to people on a sensory level that is really, identifies with the things we probably all struggle with internally: purpose,
Yeah.
insecurity, ego. It's sort of, it can speak to those things, and it only does it when it speaks to the most. We all kind of have it, the most foul parts of the ego. We have
Yeah.
to struggle with sort of that that dance. I I often look at some people that I've admired that you would look at them like Chris Cornell or
Yeah.
Anthony Bourdain, and these people that on the
Yeah.
surface have these perfect existences, but really struggled emotionally and spiritually about a lot of things. So I just take the Lane Staley, people like that I've known, Hillel Slovak. I take I take that I'm here as a gift, you know, especially in the last years. I've lost people that are really close to me, like my friend Aunt Fiddler passed away, and
Oh,
before that, my you know two people that were close to me, him and Jeff Buckley. So I just take all of this very like not as a given, you know what I
yeah.
mean? And you know, those people made social and creative contributions to music at large that are, you know, will be touching people for the foreseeable future. So I try to always bear that in mind with every sort of creative endeavor I embark on.
Yeah. And that is something that's always stood out to me about your music, that it's always touched upon different social issues and basically humanitarian struggles. And that's something that also stood out. Like I had an advanced copy of your new album, and it's something that really stood out with that as well. Like this album is definitely influenced by the current political climate. But also, I just wanted to ask about the title is Stockholm Syndrome. Was there any significance with that being the album title?
Well, um, I how do I think of these sort of charismatic cult of personality type leaders that we've had. It could be a head of state. It could be a record company president. It could be, anyone, the head of a film company.
Yeah.
I believe that with great power becomes great responsibility.
Yeah.
And on the flip side of that, with great power becomes, you know, decadence
Yeah.
and uh not that there's anything wrong with decadence, but certain types of like, hey, look, I like a good meal.
Yeah.
And some people
Nothing
could
wrong with
consider
that.
that some
I guess
people
it's
could
the
consider
corruption
that
part.
decadent. Uh the decadence I speak to is like, you know, 6, 7 years ago there was like a photograph um when our, you know, pseudo would be dictator and whatever he wants to call himself, and the people who enable that, members of Congress and the Senate, from these, as I'm sitting here in Florida and I think about just the level of, or the lack of any self-awareness and empathy. I was struck by this photograph, and it was of she had to be a 3 or 4 year old Latin girl that had drowned to death crossing the southern border of the United States. And that was when they had to stay in Mexico policy or whatever. Like anybody that's going to walk from Venezuela or walk from whatever war-torn country to try to seek some level of freedom, because that's what it said, that's what was inscribed on the Statue of Liberty,
Yeah.
to be met with not just like you can't come in, but we're going to set up a way for you to potentially lose your life en
Yeah.
route after in the sense that these people are born into this sort of system, really, that they have very little awareness of how they have benefited from 400 years of slavery that built an economic infrastructure that the people at the top of could capitalize off of.
Yeah.
If you looked at, what African American people have done for this country, just in the equity that was built into it from its inception, and to have it be so treated with such disregard and disrespect is it's insane.
Yeah.
So I think Stockholm Syndrome speaks to this sort of in the sense that, when the captor, identifies with, the person or people that have, enslaved them, built a system around it to justify it, and then it's not enough. You just have to keep on taking and lying and building these distractions
Yeah.
around the truth,
Yep. That's definitely the
which is
case.
which the truth is just the truth. It's not malleable.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's the truth. But, you know, everybody wants to try to tell the truth from the perspective of um, what's best for themselves and not what's best for the collective. So the record really speaks to that as much as anything. Um,
Yeah. And
so
that
that's where the
actually, like,
title came from,
yeah.
really.
And even your comments there made me think of one of the songs that you co-wrote, "Racist Piece of Shit."
Oh no, I wrote
And
that. I didn't co-write
oh,
it.
you wrote it. Okay. So you
I
directly wrote
wrote
it. Yeah. And
it.
that's a powerful song. But there's one lyric that stood out to me. It says, "Drinking the Kool-Aid of a mad orange king, another Kid Rock with all the hate talk." So obviously, Mad Orange King is Trump. But as you're thinking Kid Rock and your comments about white people profiting from black people, you have someone who started off as a white rapper, made a lot of money from black culture. So what
Uh-huh.
are your thoughts on that?
I think he's a douchebag,
Yeah,
like
I agree.
straight up. Like
Yeah,
you culture vulture douchebag.
yeah,
Like you assimilate, and that's the thing is black folk in America are so accepting and forgiving and have turned the cheek so many fucking times
yeah,
that just even where we find ourselves in this political climate, there's an entire group of people that are like, no, we're not going to go down and protest
Yeah.
and and show up. Um, you know, you created this mess. You own this society. You say it's yours, and you are beyond reproach or contempt. Okay, cool. Well, if that's what it is, then clean it up.
Yeah.
Because at a certain point, we're like, you know what? We've sat in enough uh counters and sit downs
Yeah.
and stand ups and jump arounds and whatever the fuck you want to call it. Like,
Yeah.
you had enough. You want to save it, save your damn selves.
Yeah.
You know, because at a certain point, it's like I'm not going to be the, you're not going to put a target on my back.
No.
However, if you come up in my crib, you're gonna fuck around and find out
Yeah.
that it's still real. And that's
Yeah.
where a lot of black folks are. I both agree and disagree with that. Unfortunately, we're we're probably gonna have to save this country again.
Yeah.
But how does that benefit us in a
Mm.
society that still treats the greatest arbiters of culture and identity in this country? Uh, how does you still treat me like I'm a third, fourth, fifth class citizen? Somebody, all these people sitting up here crying about their jobs. Well, last time I checked, Dylan and Scooter were not going to be in a field in Central California picking grapes.
No.
You know what I mean? So this fucking idea of all this bullshit that people be on, as far as I'm concerned, they can eat a bag full of dicks, and Kid Rock can go right there and take a couple of out of the bag full of dicks and chomp on the motherfuckers himself.
No.
Like, you gonna steal from my culture and appropriate shit and then fuck around and pretend like it didn't happen? Like, come on. Ray Charles could see that shit.
Yeah.
So
And
don't
even
miss me
like
with
with
all that.
yeah, because even like with the album, like the other song I know you wrote was "Last Call in America," and
Mm-hmm.
that basically addresses a lot of what we even just discussed right now. But I know you described it as a warning call to humanity to recognize the inflection point that is tearing the soul of this country and world apart. So I think we
Absolutely.
sort of touched upon it, but what specifically is that inflection point that you're referring to?
I mean, I think I'm gonna explain this by telling you a story about my family first.
Okay.
Barack Obama had just, you know, secured becoming the Democratic elected representative for president of the United States. I thought at the time that, you know, America had evolved not to this perfect place where I mean, there's it is ridiculous to conceive that him becoming president would end racism.
Yeah.
But at least it was a statement saying that, a person of color could reach the highest office in the land. And that was a statement.
Yeah.
My mother thought it was the worst thing that could have ever happened in this country.
Oh,
And I was so upset and angry with her for saying that.
yeah.
Because I thought, this is a time where we can like really, oh, okay, so at least, these things have changed. This is
mm,
real change. And she said it, and I thought it was so crazy and mean spirited and anything else you could think of. She said, "Remember, I told you first that
yeah,
this is going to take this country back 50 years
yeah,
because America is not ready for a black man to lead."
yeah.
She thought it should have been Hillary.
And
And
I guess Trump was the backlash to that.
we, we argued about that
Yeah,
through his entire presidency. And the
yeah,
minute Donald Trump came down that escalator,
yeah,
I was like, holy shit.
yeah,
And and it ended a lot of friendships with people for me
yeah,
because I had a friend that I've known since I was a teenager tell me that they thought it was funny.
mm,
And Angelo and I argue about this. He's like, he's the greatest entertainer in the world. He doesn't mean it in the sense of it's entertaining. He means it
yeah,
in the sense of like this is the greatest distraction,
yeah,
in the world while people get robbed. And America is the king of making these kind of deals. They did
yeah,
it in Reconstruction. They did it in Jim Crow. They do it
mm,
because we don't want to face the ugly truth that we enslaved people to have this equity. And until
yeah,
we take responsibility for that and stop pretending that it's not a fucking thing, we're just gonna be a circular firing squad. and,
yeah,
and some of my and some of my some some of my bandmates, they get worried because they know, look, they know how outspoken I am, and
oh,
but I have to speak on it. I
yeah,
have
you
to.
do.
It's
Yeah,
insane because of what nobody really seems to grapple with. Do you think, Southern man, that some carpetbagger, and I can say this, my family's from Arkansas, I can say this.
yeah,
Some people say Arkansas is the most racist state in this country. I don't really believe that. Not
no,
the way I grew up in Arkansas. And it's
yeah,
probably very different from everybody else's experience. But mine was not like that. I never saw any white person speak crazy to my grandfather, but he had a certain type of reputation. And that's a story for another time.
yeah,
However, um, you know, people worry about me for speaking about this, but I have to. At a certain
yeah,
point, it's like you said, it's like we're at a tipping point. I think we're way past that tipping point.
yep, I agree.
I think we're way past it. I think the minute he became president after Joe Biden, and it unleashed the ugliness in this country that I don't as a black man, it would be very hard for me to trust people in this
Yeah,
country at this point. I don't feel like being here. I don't feel welcome here.
mm,
And I know a lot of other people of color that feel that same way. And you cannot tell me otherwise because it'd be like asking me to not believe what I'm seeing with my own eyes. And I'm not that person. I'm not gonna
yep,
pretend to be that naive anymore because it
yep,
makes somebody feel uncomfortable. What people should feel uncomfortable with is racism. And
yeah,
what people should feel uncomfortable with is the lie that's being propagated. Do you think that these billionaires that yearn to become trillionaires give give less than a fuck about you? And they
yeah,
will weaponize racism to hold on to power. And when they're done with whoever the poster child for their rage or their hatred is, your ass is next.
Yeah,
And
it
make
is.
no mistake about it.
Yeah,
Because then it'll be, well, you're not purely white enough,
yeah,
or you're not Catholic enough, or you're not Jewish enough, or you're not enough of whatever, because these kind of people, to maintain power, they will move the goalpost as many times as they can. And you are just the stupid fucking puppet that went along with it till you figured out, oh shit, now I'm in the hot seat.
yeah,
My friend likes to remind me of, I think it was like, what's that first it was the trade unionists, and I said nothing, and then it was, and then it goes down this whole list, and then
yeah,
it was me, and there was no
yeah,
one left to speak for me. That's where we are. We've been there since that asshole came down that escalator.
yeah,
And I don't understand how. Well, I do understand, because the South, they want to keep up their monuments. They want to believe this lie about the Civil War. It's like you lost, and with good reason. Because to war and to subjugate each other and to tear people down for money and because of the color of their skin is insane.
yep, it is.
It's the most debased way to live in any civilized society, and yet we find ourselves here. So I'm sorry, excuse my rant. I just,
Yeah,
man,
yeah,
at a
no
certain
worries. You
point,
need to, and that's actually something the band's always been known for. Like at one time it was Reagan and the Cold War, and now it's what's going on now. But I am going to switch gears a bit because I know you're also a Cordon Bleu trained chef. So I thought that
yeah.
would be kind of interesting to ask. Are there any similarities with the creative process between creating music and the culinary arts?
um, Absolutely.
Yeah,
Um, and it's like food is such a sense of cultural pride for people. Um, and it's also like you combine these elements of things that are not supposed to fit together sometimes.
yeah,
You know what I mean? They're not, so I think it only made sense that when I stopped doing music, I wanted to do that. Plus, to
yeah.
be honest with you, at a certain point, I had so many people coming up to me yelling "Fishbone, Fishbone," and I wanted to sit in the back, like in the back of a place and just cut up vegetables and
That
cook
gives you a
food
break.
and be anonymous, you
Yeah.
know. But even when I went to I tell you something funny. It's like, oh, I went to culinary school. I wanted to get as far away from music and Fishbone as I could. And the second day of school, three of my instructors walked in with Fishbone shirts on and
Oh no.
started pointing at me, going, we see you." I'm like, great.
Can't escape it.
I felt like I felt like Michael Corleone and God
Yeah.
the Godfather 3. Every time I try to get out, they drag me back in. you know, it was so it's funny in that way, but yeah, that is literally why I did it. I just wanted to be like, the De La Soul album, the Anonymous No One.
Yeah.
Yeah, but you know, if it's anything I've learned in life, it's like the farther you run away from yourself, the the more you have to face it.
Yeah. And I guess that just goes to the legacy of the band.
Yeah,
So
I think it's like a metaphor for our society. It's like,
yeah.
the farther you run away from your own sort of like power or your own sort of like honor and honor to yourself and what you stand for, you know, the more it chases you to show up in those places where you're expected to stand for something.
Yeah,
Like
definitely.
what you don't stand for something, you fall for anything.
Yeah, that's definitely the
That
case. So I
that's where we
enjoyed all
are.
this. Yeah. So I enjoyed all discussion. I think the Zoom's probably going to cut off in a bit. So just
Okay.
to conclude, you have the new album coming out June 27th, Stockholm Syndrome. I know you're currently on tour. So is there anything else you want to plug?
Um, we have the last few copies of a record I did when I quit the band that a lot of people don't know
Okay.
about. It's called the CD Orchestra,
Okay.
and it's myself and like Amp Fiddler and Jeff Buckley and my friend David Ryan Harris and my friend India Davenport from Brand New Heavies and just a
Yeah.
lot of people that showed up for me when that record came out. Um, you guys should check it out. But really, I would say that Stockholm Syndrome is a return to Fishbone's roots politically, socially, emotionally, and especially musically. And I would really hope that, a lot of my peers um, and contemporaries haven't said a lot about what's going on politically
Yeah.
um, and haven't sort of stood up for anything other than, I guess, making more money. I wish they would come out and say something. I have a voice, and I appreciate that anybody would listen to anything I would say. uh, but I think stop. Just give it a listen. I think it's not just an amazing message, but it's really amazing musically, and there's a lot of our heart and soul in this one.
Yeah.
And so I would just ask that people really try to give it a listen and, you know, really check out our greatest offering. It might be the theme song for to help us all get over the hump.
Yeah. It's definitely powerful.
Yeah, well, thank
So
you, man. I'm glad
yeah,
you like
thank
the
you.
record.
Yeah. So that's a good way to conclude. Check out the album and also check out your CD orchestra.
Yeah, yeah,
Check that out
SD
too. It's
like
cool you
CD
got to
like
work with Jeff Buckley. So that
yeah,
I'm sure
yeah,
that would have been awesome.
yeah.
So I'd like to once again thank you. I really enjoyed our discussion.
Thank you. Pleasure.
So that was my interview with Chris Dowd of Fishbone. And I really enjoyed our discussion. And if anything, we potentially could have talked longer, but he did have a sound check afterwards. And the Zoom only had a time limit of 40 minutes. And I'm too cheap to splurge for the poor. Not only just too cheap, I'm too broke. But we did have a bit of a discussion before and after the interview that did not get recorded. But yeah, it was definitely, I'm a fan of Fishbone. And also, prior to the interview, I took the opportunity to do a bit of a deep dive. So I listened to every album that they released. So many of those albums I've already previously listened to. So it was nice to be able to revisit them. So in the next day or two, I do plan on releasing a video where I rank the albums in order and also share my list of top 10 favorite Fishbone songs. So, what did you think of the interview? Do you have a favorite Fishbone song or album? Have you ever seen them live in concert? Feel free to leave a comment. And if you want me to continue to make videos, please like and subscribe. Also, feel free to check out the website, Ongoing History of protestsongs.com. So thanks for watching, and please stay safe.